they start out with a hypothesis which they believe is self-evident. And the other problem that I think, which is also documented in your book, is that there is a lack, not just a lack, there is a complete absence of anything that would count as evidence that supports their hypothesis. They don't want to mention statistics because they think it is not, you can't really measure this in statistics and so on. So every time you try to bring up this question of saying, you want to push back and say, okay, when you say there is caste is discrimination, or there is systemic problems in the place and so on, you push them for more clarity on their question. What exactly do you mean when you make this question, when you make this allegation? And the standard response is to fall back on something like, oh, this is all over the place. If you can't see it, you're part of the problem.
Meritocracy, as they define it, is a cover-up for structural biases that exist.
Correct.
So I have an inherent advantage over you because of the structure of this place, and I call it meritocracy. So you could do a study which says we'll take the people from lower caste, whatever score they have, and those from upper caste have the same score. So let's say you have certain number of people who got between 180 and 185, right? Lower caste. So you take those people, and then you take upper caste people also from 180, 185. So then, according to meritocracy, they are similar.
Yes.
According to us.
Yes, yes.
According to them, there is an advantage the Brahmin has.
Absolutely.
So now you have equal merit-based people. Now you follow their outcome at the end of the course. Did the Brahmins do better because it's a because it's a Brahmin privileged? If so, then she would be right. Because you would say you started people equal on merit, but the Brahmins did better, so you have a structural advantage for Brahmins. Correct? That would be the argument. Whereas if you can show that those who have between 180 and 185, whether they're Brahmins or Shudras or Dalits or whatever they are, their outcome is going to be similar. That's okay, right. Then you are showing that meritocracy works. It's all meritocracy. It is nothing, the caste is not a factor.
Very good afternoon to one and all here. It's our pleasure and honor to have in our midst Rajiv Ji Malhotra. We are gathered here to discuss about certain gnawing issues in the premium education institutions. We do have some background of what we are about to discuss, but I think I will now invite Rajiv Ji to take over, and then we will see how the event flows.
Thank you very much. So, we found out that there is a big attack on IIT, starting with Harvard professor accusing IIT of being casteist, and this has been going on for 10 years, and finally wrote a book. Then they teamed up with some African Americans in US, teamed up with blacks in Harvard, teamed up with some Dalits they brought from here to Kennedy School in Harvard. Then all this happened, and a lot of tamasha. Then they filed a lawsuit against Cisco. Then they came up with all the allegations that this is this, that, and the other. So why I'm here is, speaking as a scholar has value. I've made a very strong case. Speaking as a scholar has value if the people affected are also involved. If you're talking about a certain community, then you go to that community and ask them, what do you think? And you expect their support because you're helping them. So in the US, we have Ron Gupta, the president of Pan IIT USA, given a very strong endorsement. We've had the Pan IIT of Washington, DC invite me. We had a video on that. Very strong endorsement. That's very good. Otherwise, who am I? Why am I? What am I fighting for? If the IITs themselves are not concerned and not fighting for themselves, then why the hell should I waste my time? So when I last came to Delhi, we launched that book, Snakes in the Ganga, which he has a copy of. In that book, there's a lot of chapters on this battle for IIT, and we've also made a separate book on it now. So I went to IIT Madras, and how many of you seen a discussion I had with three faculty members in IIT Madras? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of you, 8 of you out of 20. Okay. So that was a very successful one. And the way it was formatted was not that me giving a lecture. No. One of the IIT leaders, one of the IIT faculty prepared 10 questions that he will ask the other two. And I would be one of the panelists also. But he leads the panel discussion. He asked a question like, do you see discrimination in your class? They asked an answer. What do you think of this allegation that IIT is elitist? What is your allegation or the response? They give answer. He's leading a conversation. So that was very useful. It's a 45-50 minute video, and it spread a lot of knowledge, a lot of information that this is how IIT Madras people, in their personal capacity, they're not speaking as institution, they're speaking in their personal capacity, but very openly. This is what they have to say. And they're very upset, they're very angry, they're saying that this is a wrong way to profile, stereotype us, things like that. So we had a good, successful discussion. If somebody has written a book, it's about you. All you have to do is a book review. You can say, I support it. Who cares? That's your view, it's your view. You can say, I don't like it, this is my problem. But if you're afraid to review a book, then you should not even be in academics. Because an academic person should be able to review a book by another academic person. He should be able to give his counter argument. So I said we are basically, that big fat book called Snakes in the Ganga is a review of many such books that Western scholars and Indian scholars, Ashoka University, Kriya, Godrej, all these universities have come up with, and TIS, social science people, what they think of the technical education. That's what it is. Social science people turning technical education into their idea of social science, social justice. I just want to, before drawing a conclusion, I just want to ask, are there people in this room who want to express their analysis of this attack on IITs?
At the outset, Rajiv ji, thank you very much for sparing your time. I am Rangarajan from IIT Bombay. I am a PhD student. I'm a chartered accountant by profession. I'm a PhD student, and I am a student under Professor Varadaraj Bapat. If it is okay with you, I will take about 2-3 minutes to express my views with respect to the work that you have done, and then bring it to IIT, if that is okay with you. With your permission, I would like to do that. Friends, I'm sure many of you would have gone through the many videos which are there on YouTube. And of course, as far as to speak for myself, I would have seen at least about 30 to 40 videos at the minimum, and I don't keep account of it. I have seen the latest video which you have had with Ganesh Arnalji on the BBS. So I watch your videos with a lot of attention. And at the outset, on behalf of everybody present here, I would like to extend our appreciation and gratitude for the sort of work that you have done over the last about 32 years. So you mentioned somewhere after 40, you have sort of got into it actively. You have practically covered every aspect of the gamut of the attack on India in every aspect. Now, even the Snakes in the Ganga is too large for me to claim to have read it completely, but I have gone through the various chapters, and I have correlated it with the various lectures which are there. And it is important also to place on record the contribution that has been made by your co-author, Ms. Vijaya Vishwanathanji. As far as IIT Madras, the attack on IIT is concerned, I would like to just start a bit in terms of what I have understood, which I am sure is it is only, sort of scratching the surface. And then I would request all the other co-panelists to sort of express their views, and then also very focused in terms of what needs to be done. Very clearly, what is understood is IIT is one of the crowns in the educational institution of this country, and which is a sort of a the forces specifically from Harvard, as I have seen it, wish to sort of dilute this sort of the capacity which is there in IIT, and the sort of competence which is in IIT. And IIT is the backbone for the technology creation in the country. So as part of some sort of a design, it appears to me that that is sought to be broken. And I have seen Ajanta Subramanian, professor, who has written the book on caste and how meritocracy and all that. I completely disagree with that. And it is very clearly seems to be agenda driven.
Okay, I am Professor Niranjan from the mathematics department. As I was saying, I stumbled upon you quite accidentally. I was watching something else. And this is going to be part of also a question that I want to ask you, which is related to the book and also something about, this is something I've been thinking about and I don't quite have a good answer to this. When I saw your first video to the later time to completely comprehend what it is that you are saying, what you are actually talking about, which is to say, you see, if you Google something or you look up something on Wikipedia, a general topic, the narrative is something. And now you say, if you're saying something else, it takes a lot of time and effort to get another person to see that what you are actually arguing about is not what is the dominant narrative in the first place. Now, one of the problems that I see with the narrative like of the likes of Professor Ajanta Subramanian is that they start out with a hypothesis which they believe is self-evident. And the other problem that I think, which is also documented in your book, is that there is a lack, not just a lack, there is a complete absence of anything that would count as evidence that supports their hypothesis. They don't want to mention statistics because they think it is not, you can't really measure this in statistics and so on. So every time you try to bring up this question of saying, you want to push back and say, okay, when you say there is caste is discrimination or there is systemic problems in the place and so on, you push them for more clarity on their question. What exactly do you mean when you make this question, when you make this allegation? And the standard response is to fall back on something like, oh, this is all over the place. If you can't see it, you're part of the problem. You need to listen to them more and so on. And so the problem that happens is if you want to have a dialogue or you want to push this back, they do not come forward for a debate, which is something that you have mentioned quite a few times, right? That you invited people for a debate and they just stay away from this whole topic. So what worries me or what really is a sort of bothersome thing is, if you want to push them back, one of the things that you need to do is dent that narrative in the first place. There is something about that narrative which captures people's attention because it is very easy to point to something and say, this is the problem and this is all over the place. But when you ask them for specifics, something that can be measured, independently without bringing anecdotes into the picture, the story moves all over the place. And so I think this is one of the problems that is there, which is even in her book, which I've not read her book, but I've read your critique and this is based on my reading of your book.
What is her theory of meritocracy?
So she believes that meritocracy is essentially a rigged game in some sense, that the people who already have benefits have lifted the notion of meritocracy as a self-serving game, which helps them again to build up what they already have and to create a sort of atmosphere by which it looks like they're doing things in a fair way, but inherently there is bias and there is a problem in the whole way the whole thing is structured.
Meritocracy for the benefit of people. Meritocracy, as they define it, is a cover-up for structural biases that exist.
Correct.
So I have an inherent advantage over you because of the structure of this place, and I call it meritocracy. Correct?
Yes.
So give me an example of what would be, according to her, what would be that kind of structural advantage which we call meritocracy.
So she, for instance, thinks that there is something called cultural capital, which people, so if you're born of a certain caste, the culture of your caste, what you call proudly as the culture of your caste, is in some sense cultural capital. It puts you at an advantage over people who do not have that.
Excellent.
And that essentially is going to be a gap that can never be bridged by these exams and other things and so on.
So, suppose I were to give a response to her, and I want your view on it. The response is that knowledge of English is a cultural capital today. It has nothing to do with Brahmins.
Correct.
Knowledge of English.
Right.
Angreziyat.
Right.
Because it gives you an advantage in exams, it gives you an advantage getting jobs, matrimonial, in terms of your social status, everything. Knowing English, right accent, right kind of idiom gives you is cultural capital. Correct?
Correct.
She never go there and talk about that. She'll never talk about that. You understand? Having a Harvard degree and a thappa that you are from Harvard is cultural capital.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
And it can be marketed as meritocracy, but it is not meritocracy. Just because a guy knows English and he's a professor at Harvard does not mean that what he's saying has merit. That is not meritocracy. But a lot of people will give them the benefit of doubt because they're talking a certain way.
Sure.
So the way to explain this is to give a counter examples that meritocracy, according to them, if you were to take their definition of meritocracy, then you also have to apply it to English language.
Sure.
You have to apply it to prestigious degrees. Who lives in a prestigious neighborhood? All kind of things give what she calls cultural capital.
Correct.
So now that you have explained what is cultural capital, according to her, that now you can see her whole theory is that the meritocracy of IITs is nothing but cultural capital. That is what she's saying. Now, what is her next argument based on that?
So she thinks that unless the system is fundamentally changed, you cannot begin to address these inequities that are there, because ultimately whatever the system that is being advanced is only going to serve the people who already have, only going to serve the haves and not the have-nots, which in her description also comes to say that the have-nots are essentially people of lower caste and who have been who are disadvantaged traditionally, conventionally and over time and so on.
So since you understand now her argument on meritocracy, and that is what she wants to topple the IIT, attack on IITs is based on meritocracy theory. There is a theory of meritocracy by the Marxists who believe in these things. Okay. So now what would you respond as an IIT professor if somebody says that your meritocracy to students, whether it's entrance exam, whether it is the grades they get and jobs they get, it's all, this meritocracy is a sham. Actually, it's a caste privilege which has been called meritocracy. What are the arguments against it?
So one thing one can always do is check to see if there are people from whom they would a priori call the backward caste or the underprivileged, and see if they've also done well. Now, if something is systemic, which means it is going to prevent them, sooner or later it's going to hit them in some way, then they are not going to gain something from the system at all. Whereas I'm sure there are many examples. I don't have the data on this, but I'm sure there are many instances of people who come from underprivileged backgrounds, who've made it big and whose quality of life has dramatically improved. And so
how would you measure, what statistics would you look for to make that point? What would be the statistics?
So one thing would be to see how much their standards of living have changed. Or if for instance, there were people, or how much more educated their children have become. So if they've come from a place where their parents were not educated, but their children are now educated, or if they're old enough that they have grandkids and their grandkids are in a much better place, this is already a sign of progress. Now, I'm sure there may be.
So let me propose something and see your reaction.
Sure.
So in the JEE exam, that's the entrance exam?
Yes.
JEE. So what is the cutoff? How much is the highest mark you can get, JEE?
So the exam is, I think, for 360, but
the highest mark is 360?
The exam is for 360 points. Yeah.
The maximum, if somebody got...
The maximum you can score is 360.
360?
Yes.
What is the cutoff? 300 or whatever?
No, I think it's much lower than that.
How much? No, I'm
Around
talking
150.
about on merit, not on caste-based reservation, but on merit.
No, I think it's around 150.
150.
Yes.
So let's say, without quotas in mind, without looking at quotas, people who come in through the merit basis have a score between above 150. Okay. There must be some lower caste among them also who got in on merit.
Yes, very much so.
Right.
Yes.
So you could do a study which says we'll take the people from lower caste, whatever score they have, and those from upper caste have the same score. So let's say you have certain number of people who got between 180 and 185, right? Lower caste. So you take those people, and then you take upper caste people also from 180, 185. So then, according to meritocracy, they are similar.
Yes.
According to us.
Yes, yes.
According to them, there is an advantage the Brahmin has.
Absolutely.
So now you have equal merit-based people. Now you follow their outcome at the end of the course. Did the Brahmins do better because it's a because it's a Brahmin privileged? If so, then she would be right. because you would say you started people equal on merit, but the Brahmins did better, so you have a structural advantage for Brahmins. Correct? That would be the argument. Whereas if you can show that those who have between 180 and 185, whether they're Brahmins or Shudras or Dalits or whatever they are, their outcome is going to be similar. Okay, right. Then you are showing that meritocracy works. It's all meritocracy. It is nothing, the caste is not a factor. So this is the kind of what an engineer would design. This is an argument. Okay. Not a general argument of ye kar diya, wo kar diya. You as engineers have to come up with scientific arguments like I gave. This is a scientific argument. Okay. So I would say that you guys should come up with this data. There must be somewhere. What else could you do as data? Because you're saying data is lacking. So okay, then what is the data we need? Why haven't you guys come up with that? You guys should have come up with a study of your own, saying that when you look at those who enter, regardless of caste, if they are at a certain level in the score, then we track their progress to see if caste is a privilege that allows some people to rise better than the lower caste, even though the starting point was the same. That would be a test or not?
So one other point that she brings about, which is she says that I think that this incidences of caste bias and discrimination that are present on all these campuses, if it's there in her book and people who follow her and write similar things. So one point in that thing is because I think many of them use a similar kind of argument with respect to discrimination against blacks, but there's a fundamental problem in this sort of analogy, which is race is something that you can see. Whereas I can propose that if you have a list of pictures of people, don't show their names, don't reveal their caste, and then you ask people to identify how many of these you think are forward and backward caste.
So she says the name tells you if this guy is Iyer or this guy is this one, that one. The name will tell what caste it is. What's your response to that?
I would say that maybe some people know it, but a majority of them have really no idea. That is the truth.
So there's another scientific measurement you could do.
Yes.
You could do a survey. You could do a survey, a sample of people, and give them names, a lot of names. They don't have to be any particular person's name, just last names, and do a survey of what caste do you think this guy is, this guy is, this guy is, this guy is, and see what percent of the IIT student community can even tell the difference. And if you find that most people cannot tell the difference, then you made a point. Sure. So that's another statistical survey you could do as a rebuttal.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, so I've given you two things you could do.
Yes. So the other problem is, which she talks about, is that there is something. I mean, this is the point that I was making again. That that you can tell people by their face if they are forward caste or backward caste. And that again, as I said, it's part of the same test. Which if you give a bunch of pictures, you can't tell anyone.
So another thing that they say always is that because of the caste oppression, the person is committing suicide, has psychological problems, or drops out. This is often the case. So the question is, you are a statistician, you have to do a correlation. Is it correlated with caste, or is it correlated with being underprepared when you got in? You understand the difference?
Yes.
Yeah. So if the cutoff is 150, like if somebody who's got 75 and gets in and he has a problem, it's not because of caste, it is because he's not qualified. And even if a Brahmin of mark 75 got in, he would also have the same problem. So if you can show that this is correlated with merit, it's lack of merit which gets the student in trouble. It is not the wrong caste, a right caste. That would be another proof. It would be a proof. If you could show that failure rate is not correlated with caste but correlated with the score, then it means people who got in artificially because you guys inflated gave them more seats, you are doing a disservice to them. You're doing a disservice because you're bringing in people who are not prepared, and then they are going to have problems. So the problems are more percentage-wise with people who got in artificially rather than through merit. So this will also prove meritocracy. It will show that if you don't follow meritocracy, you're creating psychological problems. Correct? Yes. The third thing I've given you.
So, one point I would like to add in your discussion with Professor is that one parameter can be also added, in this meritocracy which you are talking, that the one student who is from the caste, basically reservation, and the one student which is from open candidate, and both are having similar background of finance, They come from the same locality and they live almost similar life. Even one belonged from the so-called Brahman family, or maybe Baniya family, or maybe Chatri family, but they have almost similar financial conditions and similar living styles. And then how they are performing basically when they are coming
Excellent.
here.
This is excellent.
Yeah.
So what you need is to draw statistical correlation of success, performance versus what are the factors. Is caste a factor? Is the entrance grade a factor? Is the economic status of the family a factor? So if you find out that their success, their performance depends more on the entrance grade, because he's a smarter guy, not smarter guy, nothing to do with caste, and it depends more on things like his family background, maybe the people, regardless of caste, poor people are poor people. Yeah. So like that, if you find out what are the statistical correlates that are strong, and the caste correlate is not as strong a correlate, you'll have made a very, very, very intelligent, very important contribution. It would be certainly a worthy paper to publish anywhere. And this is the kind of rigor that I would like you to do. That is what I expect you guys to do in IIT Bombay. You expect to respond in this way, with this level of logic. And not just IIT, NITIE also. You should respond with statistical data, with logic, things like that. Any other person who has a comment?
Actually, I'm not aware of the JEE entrance process, but IITs also have the PhD student entrance process, wherein the discretion of the professor is very important in order to select the candidate for the PhD admissions. So, for the PhD process, the reservation quota system is not enforceable. If the professor is not convinced that the student who is appearing for the entrance exam and also for the interview is that much promising. So that argument also needs to be understood, and it also needs to be considered that why there is not much participation from the SC/ST community or the backward community in the research area.
So that's a question. We don't know what is the methodology you propose. Do you have a methodology on how to analyze this?
Yeah, so there cannot be one-dimensional methodology in this entire process, because it depends on the specialization of the professor. For example, if I come from philosophy background, we have Indian philosophy, we have Western philosophy. Within Indian philosophy also, the professor would prefer a candidate who really knows the Sanskrit or who has the very sound knowledge in the original text. So there is this process for the PhD admission is very nuanced and is very much complex as compared to the JEE process. So students and also the people who are making this argument that the SC/ST community are not properly represented in the research community, so they are missing this point.
Anything else? Anybody want to give that?
Sir. So I'm basically from Hyderabad. So my surname is Kalahasti.
I'm going there in 2 days.
Yeah. So my surname is Kalahasti. So you told that based on surname they'll find out what caste you are from. I just want to give a rebuttal. There are surnames of Kalahasti. People have surnames with, like, they have the surname Kalahasti who come from other castes as well. So in this case, how are they going to find out?
Yeah, so that's the kind of argument you need to give. So you need to read carefully what somebody has written and give an answer. And this is not nothing, oh, hum darte hain, humko aata nahi, kya wo maar denge, should we say on camera, should we not say on camera? I mean, do you think that it is a wrong thing to say on camera that caste cannot be determined by a surname, because in my community, we have the same surname for many level of caste? Is it anything wrong? Anybody should be afraid of that? Because we are not asking you to say some stupid things, Anything wrong with saying that let's correlate performance with economic background of the family and see if that is a strong correlate rather than caste? Anything wrong with that? Come on, people are doing this kind of social science all the time.
So another point is, I don't know, this can be come under this parameter basically, but once the student came here, with their merit and all, then how they are going to be exposed here and how they have background, basically it relates much with performance ahead. So usually what we see here in case of a latest death also, that people when come here, they someone trying to capture them and then brainwash, and then while brainwashing, of course they will not have good performance in their academics, and how much they have pride about their country, their nationality and all those things, that can be also one point.
So let me give you methodology. Do you have a particular organization people join when they are from the left? Okay, so can you do a statistical correlation on their performance versus those who don't join? Okay, if you did a performance and said there are students who are within this 180 and 200 mark level, okay, and some of them are upper caste, some of them are lower caste, and rather than looking at caste as a differentiator because they are all in the same window of marks, we will see those who join organization X versus Y. What is the influence of, what is the impact of social political pressure on performance? Are people underperforming because they are being channeled into the wrong things and they're not studying? They're spending more of their time doing all this gather. So that would be a paper. I mean, if you could really say this, we know who are the members of this organization or that organization, and we have looked at what their performance is with people compared to people of the same marks who are not members. I think that's another benchmark you could do. So you need to look for scientific, analytical arguments.
So related to this also, again I have one point that the IIT structure nowadays, what I feel that they are very much polluted, and this can be also one analysis, that how ranking is one thing, but how the performance of a student who are coming here and because of this environment inside the campus are basically harming their future and all, because this is related to again what degrading the IITs, breaking India, and then dividing community here.
So you see, this is exactly how scholarship should be done. You come up with, first you can't do any of this without understanding what is their argument. Then you have to look at, okay, let's take it apart. What can be a counter argument argued with facts, data, statistics? Then you work on it. It's no substitute for hard work. Now, if you get a few students working with you guys and you develop this paper, which I'm asking for you, this will be huge, big thing.
Okay. I would like to suggest a methodology. Can you please check if it is fine? We can take two students of similar economic backgrounds. One is from open category and one is from reserved category. The reserved category students, they have lot of scholarships and fee waivers in the academic system. They do not have education fees and even the hostel fees and many other sources, as I am aware of. And then in the next 4 years, we can analyze their style of living or their financial status or something, and see if the person who is actually paying fees, like they started with same economic background and one is paying fee and the other is not. So
they started with not only the same economic background but the same score.
Yeah.
Same score also.
Yeah.
It can't be that one was high score already.
Right.
They have to be similar range of score approximately,
right.
And similar economic background.
Yeah.
The person who got freebies, just free help and all that, did not work so hard because he did not value it.
Right.
And the person who's paying for it and all that, has family pressure, whatnot, he wants to work hard, he's doing better.
Yeah.
That would be a good correlation also.
Right.
Yes.
Because one thing I have observed is many students tend to have this category ki anyway fee waiver to hai, to utne paise bache hai parents ke, wo itar jagah pe aise uda dete hain. Ye attitude bhi dekha hai thoda.
Now I think people are thinking.
So one other point that I wanted to bring about is that, see, at the moment the reservation is around 49%, which means that roughly half the students are from the so-called underprivileged. Now, usually this, incidents of somebody ganging up or, subjecting them to, whatever happens when they are an overwhelming majority. Now, how does one really explain? I mean, this is not, this is more a question for them to answer.
Yes.
How do you explain that half the people are subjugated by roughly half the other? In fact, around 49% is the reservation right now. Plus, there may be some who qualified as general category, because if they from the backward category but they scored marks in the general, they count as general candidates, not as reservation candidates. Which means that the number of people from the people that you've already designed as underprivileged is at least half.
More than half.
So how do you explain that half the population are always hounded by the other half?
Good qualitative argument. It's not quantifiable, but qualitative.
Sure.
It's a good argument. We're getting good responses, good counter arguments to Ajanta Subramanian's thesis. That's what I came here for.
Sir, we should study if there is any correlation between the lifestyle and how they are performing.
So lifestyle, how do you quantify? That's the thing. You cannot do enough surveillance to quantify. It will be very subjective lifestyle.
Lifestyle in the sense how we can have some psychological analysis, the
How?
happiness index sort of thing, and how they are performing. And
So is there official attendance report and record?
It's not mandatory. I mean, some instructors they follow it, many don't.
So you cannot use amount of attendance as a correlation factor.
No.
So-
That data is not there.
So in fact, the first year BTech students, the attendance is not compulsory at all for them. And in fact, I wanted to make point about the grading system for the BTech student. So there is a relative grading in the for the BTech students. So when I interacted with some of these BTech students during this particular incident happened, so many of them came from the SC/ST community. And they shared that in the first year, the academic pressure is really high because though we came into the IIT, actually we were not enough prepared to go through the academic programs that are designed here in the first year. So our CGPI in the first 2 years is really low. So it is around, if we take an average, it is around some 6.5. As compared to the other students who come from the general category, wherein it exists around 7.5. But in third and fourth year, we come to the same level. So that kind of data also can be studied, and we can take some measures that in how in first 2 years the students can cope up with this academic pressure, and it shows that actually it is more than any other discrimination but academic pressure that the students are facing.
So I would like to close with the suggestion that as a faculty member, you are on the right track, figuring out how to argue with data. And the three of you and the young lady there, if you make a little group and don't get into all the other here and there arguments, but factual argument, you know what I'm saying. You may have a very solid something to present. I'll be back in September, October. I'd love to have a conference or a meeting only with you guys. I don't want anybody else. If you're interested in that, contact me and we'll set up something. Yeah. If you are interested in doing the hard work, coming up with some arguments, some good papers. We are doing all kind of conferences. We'll invite you for a paper to present your paper if you have done this kind of homework. So thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah. So another point is basically, in the start we have discussed something from that paper only about discrimination maybe. So this is also a very good, and need of the hour to do the analysis that how discrimination is there, not only to the one particular community, but all the communities, So the one particular communities are always raised voice by many people that this is discrimination is going on. Whether it is correct or not, I don't know. I mean, the discrimination is not there as per my information. But if something is there, then this has to be also analyzed that the discrimination is happening to the other communities also, and which is hampering their study, their lifestyle, their everything. That is.
हाँ, ये बहुत बड़ी बात है. ये हमने like you mentioned, can you say that those who have been raised in the level of English they know, but how do you measure the level of English and correlate it? How do you measure level of English? Is there a way to measure?
And people who come from English background, those who come from Indian languages, whether their performance is
No, but how do you know which background is come from?
it will come from the
ठीक है. So that's another. So we have 5 or 6 good correlates. उनमें से even if 2 or 3 turn out to be stronger correlates than caste, you've got a strong, solid case. You've got a very solid case. You follow. You try out the regression analysis and correlation.
certain people from so-called backward caste would not don't want to pursue the theory of caste discrimination.
Right.
Can we have such students who will help in this study?
I would love to have people of so-called lower caste as part of this group. I would love to have that. So I'm giving you a kind of an encouragement that you don't need quantity, you don't need 30, 40 people. It's all create confusion, no leadership. You need leadership. You need somebody who's the leader, and then organize a very logical team. And if it's a small group, you'll do more work. You cannot do this kind of work with so many people. You have to do this work with 3, 4 people. Okay?
Hello, my name is Naveen. I am from Dalit community and I'm doing my PhD in electrical engineering IIT Bombay. So basically what my concern is, like, I'm mostly interested in the statistical part of the entire narration. So when people actually come in, they come from SC, ST, OBC, so-called reserve category, and general category students. And the statistics says that, like, when people actually come from reserve background, so the moment I come into IIT, now all my resources are same compared to all the other general caste students. In the sense, the faculty will be teaching to all the SC, ST, OBC and general category students. You have all the facilities at the IIT equal for everyone. Now there is no differentiation in the coaching centers. Neither there is, and when you come into the IIT, the mode of communication is through English. The mode of your exams is English. And institute does provide facilities for anyone who wants to take up English proficiency for the subjects in the first year. And it has seen that, like, when reserve category students do come, they have a dip in the CGPA in the first 2 years, and then they try to match up with the general caste students in the third and fourth year. And primarily everyone comes to IIT, it's not because if I'm from electrical, it's not that I'll pursue a career in electrical engineering. It's most often that I'll use the network of IIT to pursue my passions and become an entrepreneur or get into a corporate job. The moment you come into the IIT is when the facilities are same for everyone. Now, how people are utilizing these facilities and to what extent they are coming up with a better opportunities using that networks is what we have to look into it. And on the statistical point,
very good.
You can look at what is the backlogs for all the caste category students, SC, ST, OBC, reserve. In fact, you can even look at the minorities also, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, even Parsis also. Because it's most often that the parents' education more or less is a big denominator for the children's education and how they perform well.
So that's a very good correlation also. Parents' education. It nothing to do with caste, parents' education. So we may find out that economic status, parents' education, whether they know English or not, these are the things that determine, and it's nothing to do with caste bias. This way you debunk the whole Harvard thing. You debunk. That's how you have to do it. Very good.
And also, if we can look at the parents' occupation, whether they are from the government sector or from the private sector, because that clearly determines if they are from a government sector, the percentage of people who get into IITs is higher compared to the private, because they will be in a situation, if they are from private, the chances of getting into private universities abroad or in Singapore is much higher. So the parents' education as well as their occupation, whether they are from the government or non-government sector, differentiates their intake in IITs as of now. And
very good points. Very good points.
And also,
what's your full name? Naveen?
Naveen Gurrapu.
And you're originally from which state?
Hyderabad, Telangana.
Good. I'm going to be in Hyderabad in 2 days.
Yeah. And it's also important that how the alumni. So I have a very fundamental question that when anything happens in IIT, the question is always blamed on the system. I want to reverse that and ask, what have the SC, ST, OBC alumni done for the SC, ST, OBC students in the campus? Assuming the reservation has started from 1972, it has, like, they must have graduated close to 40,000-50,000 of SC, ST, OBC alumni. OBC remove it. They have started it in 2008. So at least 10,000 SC, ST alumni, what they have done to the students of SC, ST students in the campus, not just in IIT Bombay, in fact all the other IITs also. Have they established any SC, ST alumni chapters? like you have in race in Harvard or Stanford, how many scholarships they have provided. Are the educated SC/ST graduates abandoning their own community? That's also a question that I have to look at. Why is, I understand the institute is trying to support, but if people from their own community is not coming up and taking a leadership positions to enrich, build their community, then I'm pretty sure it will go into a dire crisis. It's a matter of time.
So I really want to thank Rajiv ji, first of all, for coming here and setting the agenda like this. I wish we also could start classes like this and say, people come here prepared or don't come. So I think that was a good way to begin, and I think we were able to get some good valid points. As for NITIE, sir, the NITIE system is somewhat different. People come here after their graduation. So first, the age at which they come to this institution is different. Second, I was just telling Ashish, they have their eyes on the prize, which is to take a placement and go. So many of the issues that probably are plaguing IIT because of the undergraduation and the number of years they spend in the system. Here, people don't spend that kind of time in the system. They come and move in the blink of an eye, and they keep their eye on the prize. So, and it's a very homogeneous crowd. Even women intake is a more recent phenomenon here. So it's a very homogeneous crowd, which therefore creates a different situation here in NITIE for us. But I think way forward has been discussed quite clearly. What is it that people are expected to do and how they are expected to contribute to this narrative. So any more people, I'm sure, whoever is willing to contribute in terms of research and very, very specific inputs, I'm sure we are welcome in this group. And I thank you for your time and your insights and for being the catalyst for a good, very precise discussion with specific questions and specific answers. So thanks everybody here who has come in here to participate. On behalf of NITIE, I want to thank you for being here.